I think you're building a shipping container hotel somewhere in California, right? You kind of, is that you taking on the lessons learned from your shipping container home and applying it to a larger project?
Yes and no, because a lot of the lessons are again so specific, right? How I design and build a residence is different than the
A multi-story
developing,
hotel.
right? So the way I sort of look at it is scaling versus escalating. So one of the first things that I ever saw on the internet that really made me think about its potential for an individual was this story of this guy that started with a paperclip, and then he traded it, I
Really?
think it was via eBay, for like a cigarette lighter and then for like a stapler. And he basically worked his way up. This was one trade of this item to something slightly more valuable, slightly more valuable. And he started with a paperclip and worked his way all the way up to a car and then a house. And what I like about that is if you were making a paperclip and then making a car, there's no direct line through those things for an individual. Even a paperclip takes a factory to make with lots of capital production, and a car takes hundreds of millions of dollars to start a car company. So, but through using one of these internet and digital platforms, he was able to just be involved in these transactions and trade his way up and escalate. He didn't have any employees, he didn't have anything else. He was just doing this all through the infrastructure provided by eBay and PayPal. So that was sort of what I've been interested in, how I approach sort of my YouTube channel is when I got out of my tech startup and architecture firm, it was because I really just don't want to manage a lot of people. I don't want to spend my time in meetings. And so with YouTube, I was thinking like, I think the first project I made was a vase, and it's been slowly escalating ever since, bigger and bigger and more complicated projects. The team stays really small, but the projects get bigger and bigger as I learn more things, get more resources. It's like a video game. You're still playing the same avatar, but you're different at level 100 than you are level 1. You have more gear, you have more assets, you have more capabilities. So there's this gradual sort of approach over the first 8 years of my YouTube channel where I went from a vase to furniture projects, to renovation projects, to bigger CNC projects, to retail renovations, to all the way up to building a shipping container house. So escalation, but I wasn't scaling. The team was still the same size, and I was still producing about the same number of videos every year. So I was thinking like, a house is a couple hundred times bigger than a vase. What's a couple hundred times bigger than a house? And the shipping container video series did really well. It did like 25 million views across 10 episodes. And I was thinking like, and I got a lot of interest from investors of being like, oh, help us build a bunch of short-term rentals, or let's build 10 of these a year for Airbnb. And I thought about it because the investment packages they were offering were great, but I didn't want to repeat myself with a whole bunch of container houses. One, I don't think container houses are that great. I think they're fine, just like everything else. They're fine if they're done well. They're bad if they're done poorly. So I was thinking what would be interesting though, and I also am not totally comfortable with the impact that short-term rentals are having on local housing markets. I think it can be really challenging. And from a zoning standpoint, we're turning residential areas into hotels, which is not always terrible, but there's some unintended consequences that weren't accounted for in those original zoning maps. So I reached back out to those investors and said, let's do a real hotel. And we acquired about 200 acres of land right outside of the entrance to Joshua Tree National Park. And we are just got entitlements a few months ago for entitlements is like the early zoning stage of permitting for a 65 room shipping container hotel. So it's been kind of fun to kind of, go from vase to house, and then from house to something that will be about 65 to 100 times bigger than a house, all supported and initiated through content creation and, digital creativity.